Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about getting the right suppressor height sights that will co-witness to the optic on your aftermarket slide. Okay, so that's really important, aftermarket slide, because usually if you get suppressor height sights for a Glock, okay, it's Glock MOS. So the way the optic mounts on a Glock MOS, it does not go directly onto the slide, right? There's an adapter plate in between the slide and the optic, right? And what that does is it raises the optic a little bit higher. So if you get Glock suppressor height sights, the sights have to be a little bit higher because your optic is sitting on an adapter plate. So I don't like the very concept of using an adapter plate if that's avoidable. I think that this is vastly superior, having a slide where the optic mounts directly onto where the optic goes directly onto the slide, and the slide has little bosses that come up, these little studs that insert into the optic. I think that's vastly superior. This holds 0 over thousands and thousands of rounds. Okay, but the issue here is because your optic is now sitting low in the slide. If you get just standard Glock MOS suppressor height sights, they're going to come a little bit higher. And when you look through it, right, what you're going to see is that your dot, right, is going to be in the middle of your front sight. Okay, so and that's not good. So your front sights are coming up too high. The front sight's basically in your way. So it took me a little while to figure out, what to get, and that's why I'm going to share this with you. Now, I like working with Ameriglo. First reason is I really like the tritium on their front sights. I like the way it looks. And at that point, right, since I know I like the way this front sight looks, at this point I only buy Ameriglo, right? Because if you go from one manufacturer to the other, you're going to run into differences. So I just stick with Ameriglo. So everything I'm telling you guys may apply to some other sites as well from different manufacturers, but it's primarily intended for Ameriglo, specifically with Holosun 507 ACSS 507C, right? Because if you're using, again, different optics, that might also change the height. Okay, so I'm keeping it kind of basically confined to or rather, I'm keeping this discussion confined to what I use, which I think is the most popular thing out there. So the right suppressor height sights to get that will co-witness to your 507, right here, is the Ameriglo XL. Okay, XL. That's the one that's going to give you an absolute co-witness. Now here's the thing. Because I use the before I go any further, let me tell you what the height is, right? So if you get the XL, your front sight is going to be 0.315. That's the height from the base, and that's how you call them up. That's how they recorded. That's how they list this. They record this from the base. So front sight is 0.315. The rear sight is 0.394. Okay, front sight 0.315, rear sight, okay, is 0.394. Okay, now if you get these and they basically sell a package. If you call them up and you say, hey, give me Ameriglo XLs, that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get 0.314 in the front and 0.394 in the back. Okay, now the issue here for me, okay, and this is more of a personal issue, right? I don't want an absolute co-witness. When I look through my glass, right, I don't like my Chevron being directly on top of my front sight. I want my front sight to be a little bit lower. So the starting point for me is, first, before I even put any sights on any iron sights on the gun, I put the optic on there. I get my zero at about 25 yards, right? So because the optic is the primary aiming device on this gun, especially with the ACSS. Let me show you guys what that looks like. So when you look in there, right, oh, there it is. When you look in there, right, you see the ACSS, right? So I got that big circle looking out through the camera. You see how that guides me to the center? So because I got that big 250 MOA circle around the edge, if I'm off, that brings me to the center. I can hold this gun upside down like this, and I will be able to find the center, right? Even if I'm holding the gun upside down, I can easily find the center. So I don't need my front sights I don't need my front sights as a reference point. You know, I don't even need perfect presentation. I can just come up like this and I will quickly find it, okay? So for me, the backup sights are purely a backup, period, okay? So I don't want them in my way. So what I do, let's take a closer look at how I'm zeroed in. Right, there you go. Right, so when I line up my iron sights, you see how that chevron is sitting on top of my chevron, on top of the front sight, right? So they're not one on top of the other. Chevron is on top of it, so they kind of work together. So if my reticle was to stop working, and I'm only using my iron sights, I know that about 7 to 10 yards, I gotta basically I have to aim about 2 to 3 inches below my bullseye. Okay, at further distances where I know the bullet's dropping, basically I would put it directly on the bullseye. But at 7 to 10 yards, I know I have to put that about 3 inches low. Now, in order for me to get this right, in order for me to get my get my iron sights, so that I have something that looks like that, right, where the chevron or your dot is on top of it, is over it and not, is over it and not on it. What I do is I get the same height in the back. My rear is 0.394, right? And then my front sight, I get it 0.280, 0.280. So what I do is I call up Ameriglo, right? Do I have a phone number here? You can just look. I don't have it here with me. You can just look it up. Just Google Ameriglo. Phone number will come right up. They're actually very good with answering the phone. Somebody almost always picks up the phone. If you want an absolute co-witness where your dot or your chevron, whatever you're using, is going to be on top of your front sight, right? So one on top of the other, right? So front sight, there's your front sight. Your red dot's going to be on top of it like that. If that's what you want, you're going to order the XL, okay? Very simple, right? If you want it set up the way I have it, where your front sight, right, is underneath your chevron or your dot, then what you're going to do is you're going to order the 0.280, okay? So that's how you're going to set it up. If you want to set it up the way that I do it, it works great for me. That's how I like it. You may not like that, right? You might want to just get the XL, where one's just on top of the other, right? I want my front sight just a little bit lower, so it's out of the way of my, it's not interfering with my chevron. I get the 0.280. Now, depending on where you get your slides from, because sometimes the slides, it may be, things may be even a little bit more off. So if after you try that out, you find that your front sight is still too high, then the other option is you can get it even a little bit lower. So a little bit lower, the next level down is 0.240 on your front sight. Okay. Now the other option is you can also change the rear sight. Okay. What I did is on some of my initially when I was buying these, right, I didn't know any better, so I would just get like suppressor height sights for Glock, right? And what would happen is I had that issue where that front sight was way too high, and my chevron or my dot was basically like in the middle of it. So here's the thing, at that point I really couldn't return it because I didn't have the box, right? So what I did is I got the rear sight a little bit higher, okay? So if I get the rear sight a little bit higher, it's going to force, it's basically, if it comes higher, it's going to force the front sight to come down a little bit. It'll get the front sight out of your way. So if you raise up the rear sight, if you get a 0.451, okay, that'll give you an extra tall rear sight, where now your front sight will drop and it'll be a little bit more out of your way, okay? So if you ended up buying just the standard Glock MOS suppressor height sights and your front sight is now in your way, right? Now, obviously, if it's not doesn't have tritium in it, like let's say it's just a blank sight, well, you could just file it down and bring it down lower. But if you got tritium in it, right, and you want to save that tritium, then what you're going to do is you just get the rear sight a little bit taller, right? You get the 0.451, right, and then that will bring everything into line. Now, the rear sight, especially if you're getting it blank, like I get it, is cheaper, right? So it's cheaper to change out the rear sight than it is to change out your front sight. So there it is. Those are the heights that you need. Do not get Glock suppressor height sights, because that is specifically set up for Glock MOS, which takes that adapter plate. For most people, you're gonna probably want the XL, right? With Ameriglo XL. If you want it set up the way I have it set up, where your front sight is just a little bit lower, so it doesn't interfere with your reticle, right? Keeps that reticle out of your way, then you probably just want the .280, right? So when you call up Ameriglo, you say, hey, listen, I want .394 in the back and .280 in the front. And they'll ship that right out to you, okay? But if you made the mistake of ordering the Glock MOS suppressor height sights, right, which cost something like $60 to $80, right? So now you've got them, and for whatever reason, let's say you can't return them, right? So now you need just a taller rear sight to level everything out. Then you get the .451 rear sight in the back, which will raise that a little bit higher, and will move that front sight out of your way a little bit, okay? So yeah, I hope that information was useful to you guys. It took me quite a bit, it took quite a while to figure this out. I have a whole bag of front sights and rear sights at different heights, as I was experimenting, right, trying to figure out what the right height is to co-witness to my 507 C's and ACSS, rather than have you guys go through all that trouble, I figured I would just give you this information, so now you know what you're looking for. Most of you are looking for Ameriglo XL, and if you want to drop it down a little bit in the front, then you get the .280 in the front. Okay, thanks for watching. If you're not a member of the channel, subscribe, hit the bell button so you get notification of new videos I put up.